waster. So let's now talk about assumptions. Now that we've looked at our regression, the assumptions are exactly the same as simple linear regression. We're now just applying them to the multiple regression. So we still have independence of error, we still have the assumption of normality of residuals, and we still have the assumption of linearity of residuals, and the assumption of, that's wrong, homoscedasticity, or constant variance. So it's the same assumptions as before. That's popped up everywhere, hasn't it? It's exactly the same as before, and we use the exact same syntax as before. The one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to use the p-norm this week. You can use it if you like. That's up to you. Now, because I've just run the regression, it doesn't matter whether or not I ask for the betas, that doesn't change the regression. I can go straight into calling my RVF plot with my y-line. And this looks okay. There's a little bit of a sign of potential fanning, but really if I was to get rid of that point there, I would have otherwise done it looks perfectly fine. So it's not like there is a consistent drastic effect of fanning, it looks like there's just one point up there that's biasing my opinion. So I think that looks fine. In terms of linearity, I think that also looks perfectly fine. Our line's going through the middle. It is a little bit high. We have more points towards -20 than +20. But really, you know, it looks okay. I'd be happy with this. Then if we look at normality, we can see it almost looks like a bimodal distribution again, or you might say that really it looks a bit like it's negatively skewed. It doesn't look too bad. If we look at the Shapiro-Wilk, Shapiro-Wilk comes up non-significant as well. So I'd be happy with this. Now, building was non-significant. And building was non-significant when we looked at our simple linear regressions. So something that we might want to consider is whether or not building is necessary in our regression model. As a rule of thumb, as you add in variables, it becomes harder and harder to find an overall effect as being significant. But generally speaking, as you put in more variables, you'll explain more variance. The reason why that happens will be made more transparent once we get into the nitty-gritty of ANOVA. But for now, we can consider removing building from our regression and just see what happens. So I'm going to run both. Our R-squared drops to 0.55. Our p-value is still significant and our f increases. So remember I said by adding in variables, it becomes harder to find significant effects. I know that we haven't spoken about f statistics, but the larger the f, the more significant the p-value, generally speaking. Our R-squared has dropped a little bit, it's 0.55, whereas before it was 0.56. It's only dropped a little bit, not too much. We can see that our research effect is 0.394, so for every 1 increase in research, ratings go up by 0.394. And for innovativeness, it's 6.82. So I believe if we just compare, that's larger than both of these. So taking out building, our coefficients have increased. Now, the reason why these have increased is because we freed up this overlap. So if I was to remove this and put in a third circle, if we would assume that this red here is building, by removing building, we freed up all of the overlap. And so each of our regressions, each of our predictors have now been able to take that unique variance that's being freed up by removing building. And what we notice is that research is now significant, meaning that by removing building from the equation, we actually increase the amount of variance explained by research, enough that it is now a significant predictor. Whereas before, with building, it was a non-significant predictor, suggesting that they had quite a lot of shared variance. Looking down our standardized betas, we can see that innovativeness is still the better predictor, but nevertheless, both research time and innovativeness are important. So it doesn't seem to be too much about how many hours you spent building the project, It seems to be more about the number of hours that you needed to put into research and the number of and the level of innovativeness of the project.